Yeah. And I mean, some of the other things too, Dean, I mean, I know a lot of people are doing too, especially when you get a little more advanced router devices or whatever, right? Some things you can do there is start doing things like, hey, I want to separate my IoT devices, right? And then say, okay, based on that, those devices can only talk to Home Assistant. And maybe, I mean, like in the case of like Phil's Plex instance, as an example, assuming it didn't need internet, then it talks to my TV and it talks to Home Assistant, and that's it, right? And start building some more kind of dialed in firewall rules, essentially, right? And then isolate those devices and so that they're not calling home, right? And then sometimes you'll find that, hey, stuff breaks, and then, okay, great, you know what? Then that means I do need to start opening up internet access to some devices. So I've essentially, in my setup, I've got a couple of different classes, right? One is internet only. One is Home Assistant only, right? And then the other one is a hybrid of Home Assistant and internet. And yeah, unless it needs to go talk to something else, at which point that would be like a custom firewall rule for that device.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That seems like a really cool setup. I mean, the fact that, so you're saying that all the devices are kind of operating on their own channel and that they're all local. They're all like forced to work on local connection.
If possible, right? Where possible. Like, again, there are, like I said, sometimes I like things that aren't necessarily local, right? Like my Govee lights and whatever. As much as I hate that I do that, it's still something that I try to do, right? So, but where possible, but.
Cool. And so, Rohan, do you have it so that the Govee lights don't have access to like your NAS, for example, or are they on like their own isolated VLAN, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. So those kind of devices are they shouldn't be talking to my NAS. So again, this is going off on an entire tangent, right? But IoT is a big threat vector from a IT security perspective, right? So IoT is a big threat vector there. So there's not necessarily a reason the device needs to talk to, again, there's no reason my light needs to talk to my NAS, right? There's nothing hosted on my NAS that it would ever need to go talk to. So yeah, again, even devices like my NAS are actually it's just firewalled off as a general rule where it doesn't need to go talk to each other, essentially. So
would you then have Home Assistant on like your white, like your stand, like the same network as you, because you trust it and it needs full access?
Yeah.
Or
so
do you have Home Assistant on its own IoT network as well?
I have it on my internal network just because, again, a lot of other things that I use are on that network. So again, for example, my TV is on my internal network, my Plex server is on my internal network, so on and so forth. And that's just honestly part of the reason is just because I hadn't built it otherwise, right? Ideally, what I would do is Home Assistant would plug into both of those networks.
Yep.
Right. So into my internal network and into my IoT network. And then it essentially for stuff on the right side, it talks via the right port. Stuff on the left side talks via the left port. Right. So whatever that looks like. I haven't gone that far yet. Again, I also want to keep it. I have a day job. I don't need this to be another job, right?
100%.
So there's some level of balance you want to do there, right? It's